Today I'm going to show you how to use a Free-Westinghouse sewing machine. I'll show you how to use one, start sewing with it. If you've got one of these machines and you're trying to learn how to sew on it, it's a little different from a Sanger or other sewing machines. The biggest thing is it is a rotary machine, so you're going to have to use special length needles because it's a rotary, and the way it rotates, the needle length's got to be shorter than a normal machine. So if you ain't got rotary needles, then you'll have to take an original needle, standard length needle, and you'll have to grind the back of it down to make the eye hole match with the rotary hook. So this is the exact length, so you'd have to lay your needle down on this chart here, line the point with the back, and you'll have to grind the back of the needle down till it's the same length as this needle chart right here before you start sewing. Otherwise you'll break a needle and damage the machine. So make sure to if you've got that chart still on the bed of the machine, you have to, if you don't have this chart, you may have to try to find an original needle to go by, or buy a set if you can find someone selling rotary needles to fit one of these. I also had an original needle, and I matched up the needle that I made with the original needle, and I also had this chart. That's how I done mine. So this is not like your normal machines. Your normal machines have a belt here and be belt driven. This is a direct drive. It's got the friction wheel, direct drive friction style. I call it a turtle shell motor. Now it's spring loaded, so that spring is what keeps it on this wheel. Now if something's wrong with your spring in your motor might not pull this wheel. But now this wheel goes opposite from a Sanger, so if you're trying to use this machine and you're turning this wheel this direction, you're going to have some problems. The wheel always goes away from you when you're turning it. So it's the old style. You've got the 20s, 30s Edison style plug, motor, light set up. I'm running a modern electronic pedal on it. Now this motor, if I can get this to focus, the voltage, it'll run on AC or DC voltage. It's kind of a unique Westinghouse motor. You've got your light switch there. The bobbins are kind of unique for this machine. They're, some of them will say made in Germany on the inside, but they're a special size, special bobbin. I'm running the original ones. I don't know if you can get aftermarket ones for this machine or not. I'm not real sure. Now, some of these bobbins you'll have problems with them fitting, even the original ones. So you just have to kind of work with them. They got a little hole in them. You got to match that little hole up with the pin. There it goes. So it'll snap in like that. And then this is your friction part. Now you can probably see there's writing inside here. It'll say Germany. Most of them says Germany inside of them. So they contracted a German manufacturer to make most of the bobbins for these Westinghouses. This will be your release. When it fills up, it'll pop and click off. So the way you will thread these, you get your thread, bring it around through this. So you got a little wire hook there that you hook it into, and you've got little threading disc. The thread will go through, and then you'll just put it through this hole and get it started. It's just like a normal machine. Once it wheel starts turning, and then when it fills up, it'll pop. That's how you thread one. It's pretty basic, pretty simple style. It's pretty close to the way the Singer bobbin winders. There's not a whole lot of difference in it. You've got your 6, 8, 10, 14, 22 down to 0 stitches per inch. Pretty basic, pretty much like a Singer 15. Now once you get below 0, that's your reverse. So if you're back tacking, you just drop it down to whatever size you want to do it. This is just like a Singer 15. You can set your dial to where this won't move. So I'm just going to put it up to 6 stitches per inch. The top of it, pretty basic. You run your thread through here, you run it there, and then you always make sure your back lever is all the way out, and these tension discs are opened up. And you run it through your tension disc, and you bring it up. There'll be a little notch right here. You come over that notch through the tension spring, come back up. Now you'll go front to back through this hole in the take-up lever, front to back, and you come back down. And when you come back down, you come back through this, and then when you come back down from there, you'll come down here, and you'll come through this little spot here, then through your needle, and that's how you thread the top. Now the bottom, you'll have this style rotary. Now all you got to do is just pull on this little wishbone style spring. Show you how to thread the bottom. So the bottom will look like this. Now the thread will come from this side here, then it'll go through this slot across here, and then slide it through here, then it'll come up through that tab right there. That is the basics on threading the bottom of it. It's a little tricky getting these in, but all they do is slide in. This little tab right here is all that holds it in. So that is that. Now, when we go to pick the thread up by the needle, you want to keep your thread up here like this. Now, when you turn the hand wheel, pick the thread up, you'll want to turn it this direction away from you. So you'll pull it down, then you'll bring it back up. But now when you do this, you'll have to put your finger on this thread. So we're going to put our finger on the thread, prop the camera up. We're going to turn this down, and then bring this bottom thread up. So there's your top and bottom thread. Now, if you got too much slack in your thread, you can reach back up here and turn your spool, pull your thread back in to match the length without cutting it. You don't have to waste your thread. You can just pull it right back up to the length you need it. Or that's how I do it. So straight stitching, this is about all this machine does, is just straight stitch. There's nothing, unless if you're using attachments to it. There is button holders and other kinds of attachments you can put on this machine, but today we're just doing the basic straight stitch and how to use it. So this foot's a little different from your Singer. Each machine, the feet are different. You'll have different lengths between seam guide lengths here. They'll be different. Singer's is more narrow. This is more like a White's style machine. There is some difference in the, so if you're sewing a quilt and maybe somebody started the quilt sewing it with a Singer straight stitch, you will have different seam allowances if you're going by the gap in the foot here. So you'll have to reconsider how you're sewing. It's pretty basic straight stitch machine. So we're going to start it off and show you how to start it. This machine's cold, so the grease is a little slow. And this is what happens when your take-up lever is not positioned right. So we'll grab a hold of it. I usually just pull it and rethread it. If you've got too much tension on your tension disc, then you'll probably have to raise your foot up. But the way I've got this machine set, the tension disc is not holding a whole lot of tension, and I'm not sewing a really tight stitch. The stitch is a fairly looser stitch. Most of the tension is coming off the tension spring on the way I've got this machine set. Some people runs the tension mainly off the disc and less on the spring here. I usually run more spring pressure and less pressure on the disc. It seems to be more accurate at stitching when you do it this way. So we're going to turn the hand wheel by hand, get the first stitch in. Now you can start by pressing the lever. You can see the take-up spring is doing more work. I find the machine more reliable this way. I use less tension on the disc, more on the spring. And you can see just how well the stitches are working. Now, back here, you're using nothing but friction drive. So this is just the basic stitch. It does fairly small stitches compared to most machines. This is the largest stitch. You can see just how much small they are. It does a good balanced stitch. I run most of the tension off of the take-up spring, or the slack spring that I call it. It's more accurate by running the tension off the spring back here and less on the disc. If you got less tension on this, then you have more likely of skipping and getting weird stitches. But that's the way I've learned to set the machine up, and it seems to like to run this way. Now, this machine will do back stitch. It'll do anything you want it to do as long as your needle bar ain't bent. Now, if your needle bar is bent, then you'll have issues with the needle coming in contact with the needle plate when you're in reverse or forward. But you can probably see just how well the stitches are well balanced on this machine. But it will go fast if you need it to go fast. Now I use this machine for doing regular sewing, and I use it in upholstery work. It's a pretty solid machine. It'll do pretty heavy work if you need heavy work done. It'll do light fabrics if you're doing light fabrics, regular quilting. If you're doing the edge, like staying along the edge, you just use the edge of this foot right here and just guide it along. If you're wanting to stay along the edge of a quilt or something, you're sewing something. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. It's pretty easy to use. It's pretty quiet. I don't have much issues with it. Every now and then you'll have to do adjustments on it. The thread will polish the tensioners down a little bit, and you'll have to just very lightly tighten it just a tiny bit. Sometimes your tension spring back here may need to be adjusted, or your adjuster screw might come loose a little bit. Temperature is usually what causes stuff to loosen up. If it's really warm, you're in a place that's really warm, a lot of times stuff will change. Being too cold can make it tighten up and do a tighter stitch. So you got to think about the temperature that you're working your machine in. Now you can drop this down and go all the way down to 22 stitches per inch, and that's pretty much a darning stitch if you're darning up a hole or something. And it's so small that it just basically weaves the fibers together. I usually don't go past 8 stitches, 10 at the most, because it is just so small. Yeah, you can use it. It's perfect machine. In a lot of cases, I prefer this Westinghouse over a Singer. Singers, you will get a balled up mess when you start out if you don't pull your threads. But now this is not the case with a Westinghouse, and the way the rotary works, you can see here, this is where I started. I didn't hold the threads and it did not ball up. It does real smooth stitching. I use the modern Walmart Schmetz needles if you live in the US. If you live in Canada or somewhere else and you have access to the regular standard Schmetz needles, German needles, I think they're manufactured in India now. I don't know if they're still manufactured in Germany, but a lot of them's manufactured in India. But all you do is grind the back of the needle up here, just shorten it down is all you do, and that makes it shorter down here on the bottom. And all that's doing is just lining the hook with the eye hole, and your hook and your eye hole has got to meet at the same time. And all your rotary machines uses a shorter needle because the needle don't have to go as far down and pick it up like you do on any kind of other machine that just has the rock and shuttle that rocks back and forth. You're using a full rotation, so you don't need near as much needle length. So all I do is take a standard Schmetz needle. You can use various sizes and just grind the back of them and shorten the length of them from the back of the needle. You can make you a whole case of them, all different sizes, and put them back, and you can sew with it just like you can a Singer. I usually make a whole handful of needles and make them in different sizes. I put them on a grinder and just grind the back of them off. I live out in a very rural area. We don't have access to sewing stuff, so if I don't order it, then I can't find it. So I usually just go to a local Walmart, get a standard Schmetz needle pack, universal needles, just grind the back of them, shorten them down, put them in the machine. They work perfectly fine. That's what I'm using now. But you can do any kind of stitches that you want to do. You can do any size stitches. You can use any style of needle, as far as I know. Any style of Schmetz needle. You can just grind them off. If you're wanting a top stitch needle or a microfiber needle, denim needle, whatever you're working with. This machine is pretty strong. It's way stronger than a modern machine that you buy today, so you can do any kind of stitch work, straight stitch work. So there's a lot of attachments that's for this machine, so I've got other videos on the attachments and accessories you can find for these machines, original. They're pretty basic, pretty simple. The main thing is keeping them oiled. I usually just keep mine oiled with motor oil. I usually use just a quart of Mobil 1 motor oil that has the cleaning properties in it. It works fine on a sewing machine. It's actually better than most sewing machine oils because it's made to protect and clean. It cleans carbon and cleans stuff inside of a car engine, so it works perfect for a sewing machine, because a sewing machine is much like a car engine. You need the parts lubricated, cleaned, and you need a lot of protection on them, so motor oil works fine, and that's what I usually use. It's pretty basic. It's a lot like the Singer Class 15, but the needle and stuff, you can use a basic needle. You just got to shorten them down. Now there's probably people that sells needles for these. They may be more expensive, I'm not sure. I've always made my own needles, and I've just used regular Schmetz and cut them down. That way I can have a variety of needles. You can go as slow as you want. Like, if I can get this to focus, so you can see how easy it moves. You can go as slow as you want with it. But that's the basics on running one of these machines. It's fairly simple, easy to use. Just remember, run your tension this way through your disc, catch it on the first little hook here, then go up through your tension spring, through your take-up lever. Always go front to back direction, then come straight down through the inside of this, down the bottom, and through this, and then into your needle eye. And that is the simple basics of it. It's very easy to run. Machine is really smooth. As long as you keep it oiled, and it works fine. This one I've had to do some work to the drive shaft that goes from the upper arm to the lower. Spacer had fell out, came out, had to put a new spacer in. But other than that, I've not done hardly anything to it other than oil it. Now sometimes people will get in here and they will move the rotary hook. They'll advance the timing forward or reverse it. If your machine's been done that way, you may have to retime it. There's a lot of people that's tinkered with these over the years, so knowing the history of your machine and what's happened to it, and looking for signs of where people's been in the machine doing work is a big part of your machine, trying to figure out what kind of history it's had. This machine don't look like it's had hardly any service done to it. Somebody's mainly sewed with it until the little shim that goes in between the drive shaft up here, that comes down here, it had got hot and just slid down the shaft, so we had to put a new copper shaft spacer in up here and take the slack out of the drive shaft. But now a lot of this does affect this rotary, so if you have anything going on with your drive shaft, it will change the timing down here. So but if everything's in time, the machine's been well kept, then this is the basics of just starting your machine up. Always check your motor brushes. A lot of these machines, if somebody sewed a lot in these machines, you will have one up on the top and you'll have one on the bottom. It's just a flat way. You just turn that out. There'll be a spring, and then there should be a little carbon brush that goes on the armature of the motor. So make sure to keep a check on them